trying, in my opinion, to position the Vatican to be one of the guarantor or participating central banks in a global currency. And by doing this, they're going to revive the old ancient practice that I talked about in Babylon's Banksters of the alliance between the bank and the temple. I think this is what their game plan is. The papacy would be in a position to give a unique moral sanction to whatever financial system Mr. Globaloney wants to put into place. I think this is why the papacy is being so heavily targeted with, basically, to be honest, Catherine, basically with a pope and a hierarchy that no longer subscribes to any sort of traditional Roman Catholic doctrine, from what I can tell. I think this is the game plan. This is a major thing. And of course, there will be backlash from traditional Catholics about it, and so on and so forth. But I think that's the game plan.
Well, clearly there is the turmoil at the top of the Vatican is extraordinary, and every sign says to me they've got the same challenge of changing the model that we have with the U.S. federal budget. In other words, whether it's the Vatican or the U.S. federal budget, they're all a prisoner of the central banking warfare model. And the war to evolve that model is turning ugly. The Midianite thing is really upon us, and to me it's one and the same.
It is one and the same for yet another reason, and I'm glad that you've mentioned this, because the Vatican Bank is, of course, kind of the central bank for the Roman Catholic Church. It's a very very large institution. But the other thing about the Vatican Bank, of course, is that it is a papal patrimony. In other words, this is one of the key positions that the Pope has to fill with some member of the Cardinal Curate. And it looks to me that what they're trying to do, Catherine, is to use the Vatican Bank and its status to cloak financial activity. In other words, if you think it's difficult to get federal accountability under the constitutional provisions, budgetary provisions of where this money is going and what it's being spent for, think about the Vatican Bank, because literally anything in that bank's operation can, by order of the Pope, be hushed up. You're dealing, in other words, with a sovereign entity with even more sovereignty in a certain sense than the Bank of International Settlements.
Do the numbers. Just imagine the magic of compound interest when you don't have to pay taxes and you have diplomatic immunity for 2,000 years.
Yeah, well, not 2,000.
That's a lot of real estate.
It's not 2,000. The papal claims really begin to be asserted and exercised in their modern form in the 9th century, and there are reasons that happens. But yeah, at least a millennium. And the problem here is, as you say, they essentially have been functioning as their own kind of very open, hidden economy, because they've exempted themselves, throughout history from secular taxation.
Well, I've always believed that the reason the Americans created the hidden system of finance after the war is to compete with the Vaticans. Right.
Yes, absolutely. It's not only competition, but in a certain sense, they've had to use the Vatican in that system.
Right.
So this is the Vatican is definitely plugged into it. If you don't believe me, folks, read Malachi Martin's novel called Vatican. It's a very historically based novel, and he goes into some details in that thing that will boggle the mind in terms of the financial arrangements. But yeah, this to me is the big cultural news, and it's bad news for traditional Catholics. I'll just put it that way. And they have my sympathy. They really do.